What's your I didn't start it but I definitely finished it moment? It started when my stepmom Susan married my dad Brian when I was 14. My mom had died 2 years before, and at first I was just happy to see dad smile again. Susan seemed nice enough, always bringing little gifts and offering to do my hair before school. Her son Chris was 16 then and mostly ignored me, which was fine. The first sign something was off came when things started disappearing from my room. Little things at first. A bracelet my mom gave me, then my favorite sweater, then an entire textbook I needed for finals. When I told Dad, Susan was right there with her concerned face saying maybe I was just being forgetful with the stress of adjusting to our new family. Dad believed her. He always believed her. Over the years it got worse. Susan would wait until Dad left for work, then completely change. She'd stand in my doorway while I got ready for school and point out every flaw. How my thighs were getting bigger, how my hair looked greasy, how no wonder I didn't have many friends. Then she'd smile so sweetly when Dad came home and asked about my day like she cared. Chris caught on to what was happening and started joining in. He'd empty my shampoo bottles and replace them with cheap stuff that made my hair look terrible. Then they'd both laugh when Dad commented that I looked messy. Or he'd move my alarm clock forward so I'd be late for school. Then Susan would lecture me about responsibility while Dad nodded along. I tried to tell Dad so many times, but Susan was always there with the tears and the hurt looks and the why would you try to come between us. She had this way of twisting everything I said until somehow I was the bad guy, the troubled teen, the problem child. When I left for college, I thought it was finally over. I kept contact minimal, came home only when absolutely necessary. Dad seemed disappointed, but I couldn't tell him the truth, that every moment in that house felt like drowning. Then Dad had his accident, just a broken arm from a fall, but I had to come home to help out. Susan acted so put upon about having to care for him, complained constantly when he couldn't hear. Chris, now 24 and still living at home, was no help at all. Then I overheard them talking when they thought everyone was asleep. Susan was telling Chris how inconvenient Brian's accident was, how they needed to speed up their plan. Chris laughed and said something about the adjustments he'd made to Dad's car. Susan shushed him and said they needed to be more careful, that the life insurance wouldn't pay out if it looked suspicious. I felt cold all over. I quietly went back to my room and pulled out my phone. For 3 years, I'd been recording every interaction with them whenever I visited, a habit I started after Susan once slapped me, then told Dad I'd thrown a tantrum and hit myself. I had hundreds of clips of their real selves when Dad wasn't around. I spent all night compiling everything. The recordings, photos of my stolen possessions I'd found in their rooms over the years, dates and details of every accident Dad had experienced since Susan moved in. Then I set up a meeting with Dad's brother William, who never liked Susan, but had been pushed out of our lives years ago. Morning at breakfast, Susan was in full performance mode, fussing over Dad, asking if I needed anything. I smiled and said actually I'd invited Uncle William over for lunch. Wouldn't that be nice? The look of panic on her face was worth every second of abuse I'd endured. When William arrived, we sat in the living room and I connected my phone to the TV. I didn't say a word, just pressed play. Susan tried to stop it. Chris tried to grab my phone, but William blocked them both. Dad just watched, his face growing paler with each recording. I was a kid who just wanted a family. But as I watched Susan and Chris being escorted out of our house by the police while Dad sobbed in Uncle William's arms, I knew I had definitely finished it.